funny. A little classical music. Yeah, I didn't think of classical music and classic ballet. I like it. That's me. Vote for the Twippies if you haven't yet already.
Now I should have levels, right?
Hello, everybody. Kyle's missing, but I hope you all are doing good today. We're gonna talk about flippers, all the flippers.
Yeah, flippers. Okay, I have
Cut
levels
off.
now.
Kyle, you have levels. Excellent.
I had
Yeah, so you guys saw the Twippies promo. Voting ends January 31st, which is Sunday, you said, Kyle?
oh, I don't know. I just assumed the month's almost over.
Thursday.
I don't keep track of days anymore.
So make sure you vote. Go to twippies.com and put in your votes for the categories. It's people's choice, so your vote matters.
That's right. There's a lot of cool choices this year.
Oh, we did not make the nominees drop-down menu, which is okay. Maybe next year. But we want y'all to vote for everyone else anyway, so.
We don't deserve that much recognition yet.
We're here to recognize the people that do deserve recognition.
Yeah.
So
Like,
vote for the
the-
Twippies. Vote for your favorite games, your favorite podcasters, streamers, articles, websites, everything.
Homebrew
Or
games?
caught the Twippy. No. Hello, Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf. Mr. Loaf. I like that guy.
Senor Loaf.
I want to always call you Mr. Loaf now. That's great. So anyway, Kyle, I don't know what you're working on.
I'm trying to get this chip back in this socket, but I need to take this socket out anyways, so I don't know why I'm working on putting the chip back in the socket, so I'm just going to stop.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's get on with the show. Let's see.
Yeah, let's get on with the show, because right after we went live 10 minutes ago, the internet took a big old dump in here.
It might dump again. So if we disappear, everybody, we're sorry.
Yeah, if this ends up being like a 30-minute episode of PinTech, rest assured I am just going home and spending the rest of Thursday relaxing. But yeah, no, let's jump into it.
Yep. So of course, our free shipping for domestic orders over $99 code is right there in the box. That way, it is PT-Linear. PT-linear for our linear flippers, all caps.
Linear.
Take advantage of that code, Linear. Yeah, we started calling it Linear, and it just threw us on a trip. So how do you get linear out of that?
You'd be surprised what people call things on the phone when they have no idea what they're trying to say. I got Linear flippers. What? What? No, that's not a word.
No one actually says that, do they? No, surely not.
Well, have I heard that one? No, but have I heard? It's funny to listen to people try to say Gottlieb.
What are some Gottliebs?
a Gottlieb. I got a Gottlieb pinball machine. A what? It's a pinball machine. It's got Gottlieb on it. What? Oh my gosh.
Is it Zachariah or Zachariah?
I think it's Zachariah, but also it's Italian, so whatever. We're not supposed to know that, right? I guess Gottlieb is German, so.
Yeah, Zachariah. Midge says Zachariah. Zachariah. I don't know.
Huh. I don't know. Who speaks Italian? But yeah, linear. For those delicious, sweet linear flippers. Oh, I forgot the product spotlight in the other room. Hold on.
Yep, because that's what we're going to do. And then also, this work lamp you put on your desk is ugly.
Okay, I'm back. What were we going to talk about first?
Hello, Wild, and welcome. We're going to do a PinTech spotlight, product spotlight.
All right.
Okay. You ready for it?
I guess so.
It's exciting. All right. Let's go. Kyle took those photos today. He did a great job.
I made those listings like a week ago. Oh. Yeah, no, actually, thanks to Google for making a phone that has like a really, really good camera, because I can't do anything like that. So, yeah. So these are actually kind of cool. Someone a couple months ago on this very show asked for me to recreate the playfield pivot brackets for an early Data East game. He said he had a Back to the Future that was missing these pieces. So I yanked some from our Simpsons and had them remade. It kind of baffles me why these things would ever be missing from a game. I mean, there's really no reason to take these things out, but it happens, right? I've taken lots of games that were part-out games before, so we're having to start to get used to making parts that are strange, and this is strange. But these guys live on the playfield themselves, and then this lives in the inside of the cabinet, and the playfield slides in and then pivots on this square peg. It's kind of
drop it down.
Oh, sorry. It's kind of a super odd design. The whole square peg and a round hole. They didn't do this for very long. It was kind of a bad way to do things. But yeah, now you can buy new ones. I had them finished in their original zinc coating, so they're going to match every other bracket in your game. Yeah, so there's a left and right side for the actual playfield bracket, and both of the cabinet brackets are the same. These guys, learning manufacturing is pretty crazy. These are much, much, much more expensive to have made than this guy. This looks more complicated. It's a bigger piece of material, but this thing was really expensive to make. Just the way that they have to bend the actual piece of metal. It's kind of interesting to learn how things are made and what it takes to have someone form these pieces. So, I don't know. It kind of surprised me when they were like, it's going to be that much? Really? It's like, this is so not much. But I guess what they have to do is they have to bend this piece, and then they have to go in and take off the rest of the non-used portion of the metal, because it would be almost impossible to bend something at a 90-degree angle with this little to hold on to, right? So anyways, I think that's neat. But I guess the story that it comes back to is, it's only happened a few times, but people will come to me, and this came from this show, but people come to me and say, hey, I need this, and then I actually turn it into a product. So I cannot stress you enough, if you need something weird, let me know. And if I think that we'd be able to sell it or make it, at a price level that will suit everybody, I'd like to do them. So if you have any parts, let us know, and we'll try to get to them. This was a fun one, though.
Awesome. Great job.
Pinball, parts are weird.
Oh, no. You don't want to watch that again.
Are you sure? We all love the Twippies, don't we?
We love the Twippies. Yeah, everyone says, thanks, Kyle. DeWisp asked, do we have a back box hinge for a black belt?
For a black belt? No, definitely not for a black belt. Wait. Is that the Stern game?
Is that the one where you like aim for the guy in the crotch?
Yeah, no, Dragon Fist is the Stern game. Black Belt is the Bally game. No, I don't know what kind. I don't think that's just like a bookcase hinge, though, isn't it? That would be like Hardbody's back box, I think. I don't think...
It's the one where you hit the guy in the crotch.
Yeah, it's got the backwards facing flipper and everything. I don't think we have those. I should look into something for that though. If it's like Hardbody, I'm pretty sure it is. I think that game...
Oh, it is. It's a 6803.
Yeah.
He says the same hinge on Strange Science, which is also Hardbody. Yeah, make it. I could use it too. And those playfold holder hinges.
Yeah, I'll definitely get to those. I was thinking about that on Simpsons also. I don't think we have those hinges either for the Data East games. Unless they're the same as Williams. They could be. But I should look into that to make sure. Because those simple little pieces are easy for our manufacturer to do, and they're relatively inexpensive. Or hopefully, because I thought this was going to be relatively inexpensive, and it turned out to be a little pricey. So.
Well, it's because you got it plated in 14 karat gold.
Yeah, exactly. Gold.
Gold.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll take a look into that. I don't remember if they're external. I don't remember how they do it. I'll see if I can find a suitable replacement, though. Black Belt. What a weird game. I like that one.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fun one. All right, Kyle.
What?
Are you ready to talk? Let's talk Bally Flippers. This was Kyle wanted to name this episode Let's Talk.
Let's talk.
Bally Flippers.
So that means I don't have to do much. All I have to do is talk. Well,
oh, no, I thought you were going to show us stuff.
Oh, we're going to show some stuff. Were we not going to talk about the homework first, or are we going to go jump straight into this?
No, we'll do that at the end of the show.
Okay. The teacher is mad at you. I'm not the teacher. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, well, let's see. Before we get into the lesson, we do have a comment from Wild Man saying a follow-up question from last week. Their Funhouse lower alphanumeric display is not working. I got some long ribbon cables and then I cross-swapped them and got the same result. I would have thought that the bottom one would have worked, but it didn't. The top one stayed on. Any ideas? How can I tell if the display has gassed out?
You can tell if the display has gassed out by doing what you just did. I think. I need to look at the manual for that board because I don't remember if only data or if the voltages also pass through the ribbon cable. If you can verify in your schematic that the board or the power to the glass comes from the ribbon cable and you swapped ribbon cables and it does the same thing, then you've got a gassed out glass. That's annoying and unfortunate. But you know, the best solution is just to get an LED replacement with one of our pin scores would be a great solution for that. Here's the way you test it, right? The other way you test it is you either get another working display, put it in your game, and if you see that it works, then you know it's your display. Or you buy a pin score from us and it does the same thing, and then you just leave the LED display in there, and maybe you'll find another glass one day. Who knows? But yeah, you kind of did most of the troubleshooting. Yeah, I need to look at the schematic, but I think that the voltage does come through the ribbon cable. So that's it.
Yeah, good luck.
Pour one out for the homie. Get a ribbon cable or get a new pin score, and you'll be real happy.
Yeah, get the pin score. Sure.
Yeah. You sometimes when they're gassed out, I mean, you could see like if you see like really bright or dark spots in like the corners, or you see like certain segments are really burnt and others aren't. I mean, sometimes that can be indications, but again, if you swapped the cables and if the voltage is going through the ribbon cable and it's not working, then yeah, it's dead. And it's, you know, they are worth saving if you can find glass, but it's really hard to find glass for those things now, so. Yeah. Sorry, that's a bummer. But you just have to play one-player games, I guess. No four-player games.
No, just, yeah. Get it fixed.
Okay.
All right, Kyle.
Do we want to talk about some flippers a little bit?
Yeah.
Geez, I didn't even prepare. I know what I want to talk about and what we should talk about. This was going to be an episode or something on how to rebuild the old-style Bally Flippers, the ones that are from, mid-'70s up until Space Invaders. I think Space Invaders was the last game to use like a traditional flipper. The first game to use the linear flipper was Rolling Stones in 1980. But we didn't have all the parts to rebuild these flippers, and I kind of deemed that, you know, they might not even need some rebuilding. So we kind of wanted to talk about this week more like, let's try to figure out when a flipper needs to be rebuilt, or what are the things to look at to deem if you think it needs to be rebuilt, versus, and then also comparing and contrasting the two different kinds of flippers. If you religiously watch us every week, we have worked on these things before. When we did my Lady Luck, Bally Lady Luck, we did work on these flippers, and that was really awesome. These are my favorite flippers because they are so weird. But let's jump up and let's start with the older flipper, right? Let's go and look at the strikes and spares really quick. Okay, which camera are we looking at? This guy? Yeah, it's that guy. Let me bring this thing in and we'll see if we can get something suitable. So this is a really standard design flipper, right? I mean, this is how every flipper works. I mean, basically, other than the linear flippers. You have a solenoid, which energizes and magnetically attracts this plunger, which then pulls this link that links the plunger and the crank, which is then affixed to the flipper. When this thing goes in, the flipper then rotates, right? Or no, I guess it's going that way. This is really, really standard. The things that wear out on these guys, and I mean, let me get a tool also. Focus. The thing that generally there's two things that you'll notice that will rob flipper power. I guess that's kind of three things, but most of them revolve around this shaft here and the coil sleeve, which is inside this solenoid here. But let's look at the motion, and I can show you kind of what it looks like when something can be deemed weak, right? So when this thing energizes, right, it is being pulled this way. And there are two spots right here where we can get issues. Let me get a pointer. You've got a, let's look at this. I mean, actually, sorry, let me step back even further. Let me get another light closer too, because it's kind of dark.
Hey, since you're moving the light, you want to zoom out that Sony cam?
Yeah, for sure. Don't use the Sony cam, because I'm going to put my face in front. Where is it?
Yeah, I want to see your. I want to see.
Nah. Oh, you can see my frizzy hair. Do you want me to move the other camera really quick? Oh, you want it zoomed out. Oh, okay. Hey.
Yeah, just so we can see you. We want to see you.
Hi.
All right.
Okay.
Now we can see where this flipper is.
You can see this weirdo guy.
All right. Teach Kyle.
Okay. You've got your plunger here. The plunger is affixed to a fiber link using a roll pin. The roll pin goes, through each side of the plunger into the link, which has a small hole in it. The link is then affixed to a stud on this crank, and then there is some hardware that affixes the link to this, whatever. But, through this motion, right, the flipping motion, it is pulling, 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 pulling. The fiber link is designed to be the weak point. And that's what ends up happening, right, is when this roll pin here is yanking, 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 this small hole that is the exact diameter of this roll pin, which is like 3/16 or something, I don't know, they're very small, will start to enlarge, right? And at the same time, this fiber link will start to also kind of enlarge here. This hole becomes oblong, both of them will. So we can kind of display this. Let me get this camera in nice and close. What we're looking for is this is what is going to create weakness, and you could probably see it, right? Watch the way, if I hold the flipper and look at that. Do you see all that slack that needs to be taken up before this thing can move? It's harder to see here, but if we force it through that is where that weakness comes from. This plunger needs to start moving and pull up all that slack before the flipper starts to actually move. If this was all super tight and all this kind of moved all at the same time, we would have a pretty sturdy flipper. But when you start to get this slop in there, that's when you start to get things kind of turning weak. In these older games, this isn't that much. If you went to your WPC game or your new Stern game, or I guess any Stern game in the last 20 years, and you had this much slop in the linkage, that's bad. You're going to really notice it, especially on games that have long ramps or ramps that are far away from the flipper, or maybe you'll have a weak orbit shot or something like that. That can be really problematic. This flipper this one would probably be okay in this game. It's a little loosey-goosey, but it's not too bad. Strikes and Spares doesn't have anything super crazy. There's no really long shots. There's no ramps. I haven't played it yet, so we don't know how they're going to perform. This side over here is bounds worse. Here, I'm going to focus this over here, and we'll look at this side. Now, this is splitting hairs, right? If this is a new game to you and you intend to keep it forever and you want the best performing game ever, just rebuild the dang flippers. But, sometimes if we're at a customer's place and the customer has 10 pinball machines and I need to bide my time because I need to fix certain things over others, if I saw the flippers this way, this might not be this service call. It might be the next time you swing by. But this one's a bit looser. There's a lot more play there. So this thing's going to be a lot sloppier. Yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense? Can you see kind of what I'm getting at there?
Yeah. So how do you get rid of that movement?
To get rid of all that slop, we need to replace components. Let's disassemble this flipper. Let me get this camera out of the way a little bit. We'll go back and compare and contrast some of the components later because it is pretty interesting how Bally used basically the same base plate or some of the same equipment for their flippers from 1975 or so all the way until 1988.
Nice. How many different Bally Flipper mechs are there? Like generations of them.
I don't know for sure, but no, there's a lot more than two. I mean, the flippers from the 40s, the 50s and 60s are different. The early 70s flippers are way different than the mid 70s and late 70s flippers like this. Not a lot of stuff is interchangeable. So here's another thing that we can look at for like pure flipper gusto, right? I got to look at the screen to see if this comes through at all. It's a little too dark.
I can fix that on my end too. I have the exposure drop.
The shots look better, but
that light is so bright, dude.
Is it too bright now?
Yeah, it's just, I would walk that light back and then I can bump up the exposure.
I'm going to disassemble this also so we could look at it on the bench. Maybe that's the best way to do it actually. But what we're looking at here is at the end of the flipper, we have the end of the plunger, right? And the end of the plunger repeatedly rams into the coil stop, right? This is what it's supposed to do. This limits the travel of the flipper, right? So what happens, when metal is slamming up against metal, it starts to deform. And another instance or another thing that will happen that will make these flippers, any flipper, this applies to anything, not just Bally games, is the flipper plungers will start to mushroom. Those are really tight. I need to get a different Allen wrench. There it is. When you get a mushroomed flipper plunger like that, that's creating a lot of drag inside the coil sleeve. There it goes. With a lot of drag in the coil sleeve, that's going to create resistance, thus slowing everything down, right? Let me take this apart and we'll see. Where'd it go? There it went. This is why you do all of this with the power off. if this was on and that Allen wrench decided to short out against solenoid voltage to the switches, we would be blowing things up.
Step 1, turn game off.
Yeah.
Step 2, don't drop Allen wrench.
Yeah, don't drop. That's what Chris always used to tell me when he'd hear me drop something from across the shop. Hey, don't do that. Yeah, I know. Okay. Let's take this thing apart. I'm holding the flipper bat from the top side of the play field, so this can all come out. And let's go examine this all on the bench.
Cool. Let's head to the bench, which is over here.
My hair is in my face. Okay. Do you see how mushroomed out this plunger is?
Yeah, let me swap you real quick.
Yeah, put it on the big camera. This is going to be important
shot.
to show.
Let me try to.
You see that guy, how it's flared out?
Yes.
That's going to cause a lot of resistance.
Oh, right, because it scratches on the plastic. Of the
Exactly. So it's not now. Okay, and again, these things are all amplified on games that have ramps, and the higher powered flippers will do this. I can guarantee you that these flippers have not been rebuilt. I mean, shucks, they might not ever have been changed. Every single coil in this game is original. A lot of it looks like it has factory solder. The coils are not even dusty. It's insane. This might be, it's probably not, but it's very close to a 20, 30 year in the game piece. This thing is really, really, really beat up. On those newer games, this is amplified. On this game, again, it's not a long shot ramp game, but this can cause weakness. So to get this thing like up to snuff, right, we would want to eliminate all of the free play and friction points. So we would replace this plunger. We would replace this link. So we would most likely order one piece, correct? Or, so back in the day, I mean, people would knock out the roll pins, replace the link, and put the plunger back on. Nowadays, these parts aren't too expensive, so you might as well just replace them. If you replace a plunger and link, you always want to replace the coil stop as well. These things mate to each other. You see how this thing's kind of got like a dished effect going on? I mean, these guys made up perfectly. It's a match made in heaven. If you were to replace this link or this plunger with this same coil stop, it would wear oddly, and it just wouldn't be good. So generally, as a rule of thumb, for flippers at least, you want to replace these things as a pair. But yeah, let's take it apart a little bit more. If we want to,
like a cool like pinball jewelry idea or keepsake, like you give your best friend the coil stop and you keep the plunger that match perfectly. You could wear it like as a bracelet or a necklace.
I'll go test that on my wife tonight.
Coil stop to my plunger or something like that. Right?
My wife's either going to think I'm more insane now, or she's going to think that's really sweet. So
she might like it. Yeah, just hand her the coil stop. And when she's like, what is this? And you're like, well, I have the plunger.
Yeah. Why are you handing me garbage?
We are the perfect fit.
So this really, this is a terrible example because this isn't that bad. A lot of times on really high mileage games, you'll see these things really just being an oval. This is still very round. But again, disassembly is always good. If you didn't have parts to rebuild this stuff, what we could do, you could hit this with a file, get on a grinding wheel, try to put a bevel back onto this thing, and get rid of this lip, put a new coil sleeve on, put it back together, and you'd have a pretty decently performing flipper. Maybe when this game is ready to go back together, we will do the full rebuild. For now, though, I think I might take that path, right? I might just hit this with a file, put a little bit of a bevel on it, or use a grinding wheel. A grinding wheel is a great way to quickly put a bevel on it. Put this thing back together and you'll be golden. This wear right here, you can't get out. So these flippers would never be like super primo, but it's better than nothing, especially if you're long ways on a service call or something like that. But that being said, when you're going on a service call, you really do need to carry all the parts, so you don't have to go back. This is your flipper crank. As you can see, when these go together, this guy goes here. It's just a teeny, there is tolerance, right? This can't sit on here super tight. It's not designed to be a really tight press fit, because if not, it couldn't rotate. And if it can't rotate, it can't go through its, a perfect motion of doing what it needs to do. So it's never going to be super duper tight, but this is kind of acceptable. But if it was a big giant oval and this thing was blown out, that's all bad. So just kind of think in your brain, right? Like all of these things I'm talking about and all these wear points and multiple places where things can get loosey-goosey and lose tolerance. Because it's kind of important why the engineers decided to reinvent the flipper when they started in 1980 with Rolling Stones. As a rule of thumb, not as a rule of thumb, but in actual experience, if you are taking apart your game and you do not have this E-clip and washer, it's not the end of the world. You can reassemble your flipper without these guys. They're not 100% necessary, but you should have all of your parts together when you put your games back. These guys are there just to hold and ensure that this can never come apart. But again, when this thing is cinched up against the flipper base and this thing is facing up, it's not down, it can't take itself off. You don't need them. So if you're on a service call and you don't have that E-clip or something like that, and you're working on dude's Paragon or Future Spa or something like that, and it's not there, it's not the end of the world. But as a rule of thumb, you always want to put an assembly back together the way the engineers intended. But don't fret. If it's not there, continue as normal. But yeah, that's the original. That's an old style flipper. Bally, because they had all sorts of money, Bally at this time in the late 70s, they had all sorts of cash coming in from their slot machine division. Bally also owned a big line of arcades. Bally was opening casinos. They had a lot of money. And they still saw pinball as being relatively profitable. So a lot of engineering and neat stuff went into Bally's upcoming games, right? The engineering. They reinvented a lot of stuff using linear motion. If we look at there's a big difference too, even the slingshots, the ball serve armatures, they really tried to get rid of wear points and just have things that moved in one direction without a pivot. That must have been super cool because they came up with some really clever stuff. If you look at Bally's, if you own an early 80s Bally game or mid 80s Bally game, the slingshots, they operate on a linear motion. There is a shaft that has 2 grooves cut into it for a nylon stand-up piece, which would be the kicker. You put the E-clips in, that thing stands up, and when the slingshot fires, it's a linear motion. Instead of how Williams and everyone else does it, even currently, where the slingshot will pull down and it will lever forward. Was it necessary? Probably not, but it was cool. Bally did that with the ball serve armature on some games. Slingshots were like that. What else? That's kind of it. But the flipper was also like that. So this is, let's pop on the other camera too, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. This is Bally's linear flipper. I think they're wonderful. They're really cool. They're very different, so people like to hate on them a lot, but I think they're pretty awesome. It's very similar. You've got similar pieces, but they're in different places, right? We still have a coil stop. We've got a plunger here, but the plunger does not have a link. We still have a crank, but the crank rides inside of the plunger. There's no compression spring anymore. We've got an expansion spring here that works to reset the flipper. So the idea here was that you would have less wearing pieces, and in an ideal world, you would never need to rebuild your flippers. And if you did, the only part you would ever need to replace was this nylon bushing. I've talked to some Bally engineers, and I guess that was the idea, is that they and their distributors would just sell this as your flipper rebuild kit. You knock a roll pin out, replace that nylon bushing, and you're good to go. In practice, that's not what happened. I don't know if it was a money thing or if people didn't get that or want to do that, but they ended up being replaced by, you'd replace the whole crank, you'd replace the plunger also, and that's kind of how we still do it now. Where do I go with this? I think that's neat. It was a good idea, but I think it just didn't work out that way. Let's go back to the engineering itself instead of like the semantics of the thing. The way this works is...
Can I ask you real quick, what generation is that flipper one
So
from?
this was used on every single game from Rolling Stones until Truck Stop. And you might say, well, Kyle, Truck Stop is a Williams game. Well, Kyle, Truck Stop is a System 11 game. And yes, the lower flippers on Truck Stop are Williams flippers, but the upper flippers are still Bally flippers, which is really, really weird. Truck Stop was in design at Bally when the acquisition of Bally happened by Williams. So they rewrote the software for Truck Stop to work on the 6803 computer, or I'm sorry, the System 11 computer. And they also reused a lot of Williams components. But I think due to space restrictions, the way that the upper playfield was designed, the only thing that would fit was the linear flipper. So they just went through the rest of Bally stock using these linear flippers. So yeah, every 6803 game and every game past early 1980 uses these flippers. I think Truck Stop uses a Williams soundboard. I think it's Atlantis. I think Atlantis is a game that uses the 6803 computer, but it uses a Williams soundboard, which is really neat. I might have that wrong. It might be another game, but yeah. Anywho, the way that this thing works, and as you can see because I've been pawing it, we've got a long plunger that is energized by this coil here, and in a linear motion, it pulls down on this nylon bushing on this crank, which then actuates the flipper. They do have a different feel. These things feel like big sledgehammers, where like a Williams flipper really does feel kind of like a smooth, like fast katana. These things are a little clunkier, but they have a lot of torque to them, if you will. The common wear spot on here is this. There is only one wear spot on this actual nylon piece. Let's disassemble this so you can see what I'm talking about. I do wish I would have saved some of my more worn out components. I believe the ones on Lady Luck were pretty worn out, so if you are interested in seeing these things taken apart and put back together, you could watch those videos we did a while ago. Let's see here.
Yep.
If you do own a game,
all of that's archived on our YouTube channel, and I believe there's even a Lady Luck category section, so you can see all of the episodes we did using Lady Luck. That was 6 months ago, Kyle. Can you believe that?
That's insane. If you do own one of these games, it is very, very common when you are removing the coil stops that they will not come out that easy. These threads here strip out all the time. So people will install longer screws and put a nut on the bottom. It's a giant pain in the butt. But it is a common occurrence. So you can order these. We do sell these new. The only difference is, let me get a blank one. It might make a little more sense what I'm about to explain. Before we jump back to what we were talking about before, here's a relatively blank one. Not really, actually, but yeah, whatever. The funny thing about these flipper bases is they're actually universal. Now, the way Bally did it was they made a left and a right side. But the only thing that denotes a left from a right side is which holes are tapped. If you can see here, you've got a set of holes on both sides here for a flipper bushing, and everything else is just mirrored. So a trick that my mentor, the ever insanely smart Chris Kuntz, taught me, in a pinch on a service call, you disassemble both flippers, and if you have some really screwed up threads here, you can just thread the other side, and you swap left and right, right? This is a left side flipper base, I think. So we would take this one out, thread all the other holes, and swap everything from this one to the other side, swap everything from the right side to this side that is now using a fresh hole, and you've got a good set of flipper base plates. So when in a pinch, you can do that. But, and also I believe the way we sell them now, I believe only one set of holes is tapped as well. I don't remember how we have them done. I need to double check, so don't quote me on that. But, having a good set of taps here is handy. Sometime around 1982, 1983, Bally started using a number 10, a 1032 screw here for the coil stop to alleviate that stripping out problem, which is very, very common. So if you do have a set of these, the other thing you could do is drill the old threads for the number 8 screw out and re-tap them for a number 10. The ones we sell now are already tapped for a number 10 screw. The coil stops will accommodate a number 10 screw, the more modern ones. So that is a good upgrade. These ones are still number 8. Anyways, back to the wearing portion. I'm going to have to loosen this flipper bat up. The crank uses the size tool you'll need is a 1/8 inch Allen wrench to get these set screws out. Once these guys are loose, we can take the flipper out. This guy comes loose, and we can take the plunger out. And actually, let me correct myself here. There are two things that can wear on these flippers. You've also got these internal nylon washers here, commonly referred to as a nyliner. These things can also wear out. That is the bushing in which the thinner part of this plunger rides in. This nylon piece here, you see how it's got a really flat edge right here?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you start getting your wear. What happens, and this is all just through use, right? Through the force of this thing, soft metal versus soft plastic versus hard metal, they start to get sloppy because of the constant rotation and the movement. So once you get a little bit of movement inside here, it almost amplifies much quicker than a little bit of play within your your crank and links. When you have just a little bit of play here, it can create a lot of havoc on the actual flipper. So I don't think the hate that these things garner is
Why is there so much hate? I don't understand.
Because they're different, and I think people just hate things that are different, so they don't like it.
Well, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So
we had a question real quick. From Spacion Ness asked, why do they solder terminals and not use simple terminal clips?
Because a connector is unreliable. Connectors there's a twofold thing. Connectors are unreliable and they are expensive. It's much easier to manufacture a harness with stripped wire ends and pay someone to quickly solder them on than it is to train someone to correctly crimp on a connector. And then it's also material cost, right? You also have to factor all those connectors into your build of material. And connectors can fail. Connectors are always failure points. So, yeah. Now, that being said, the later Williams games, they used quick disconnect solenoids and stuff like that. They use little crimp terminals on their flipper coils and all the other coils in the game, which is neat. But nothing beats a good, well-soldered connection, really. So
Nice. Boys says that's a nice looking Allen wrench.
thank you. It's an important tool to have. Hey, here's a quick tip. You ever have an Allen wrench that starts to get a little bit rounded off and starts to get kind of nasty at the end?
Yeah.
Don't replace it. Go get a bench grinder. Make sure it's really like good and straight, and just grind off a few millimeters of your Allen wrench, and then you have a nice hard surface again that's not kind of damaged at the tip. So until your Allen wrench gets to about here, well, then you probably want to replace it. But you know.
Nice. That's a good tip. So
I've done that with this guy or these guys a few times.
Nice. Yeah, because they have the cool handles. You want to keep those.
So yeah, these things. I think it's like it's kind of a twofold thing. They got a lot of hate because people like kind of don't get it. Parts were also a little more difficult to come by. It's just more uncommon, right? So it's harder to find those parts. And we're talking like a long time ago, right? Nowadays, you can get this stuff all day long. And there is a weird occurrence, and I think this might just be because I've worked at free play arcades before. But when I worked at the Pacific Pinball Museum, it was commonplace for some of our linear flipper assemblies to become magnetized, which is odd. The plunger itself would become magnetized in such a way that it would not want to let go of the coil stop. You would flip the right flipper and it would stick. And then as soon as you hit the left flipper, it was enough vibration for it to go and click away. Maybe it was a bad batch of these linear rods, but I have noticed that happen with some linear flipper games and very, very heavy play environments. So, yeah, I don't know. I like these things. I think they're neat and they work really well. And I think that's part of the charm of the Bally games themselves is the way that these flippers really feel like, again, just like big, giant sledgehammers. And they just rack the ball up to the top of the playfield, where the Williams games feel a bit like quicker and sharper. So, yeah, the coil bobbin otherwise is the same size. It's actually kind of hilarious. Switch the camera up to the other flipper, will you?
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at...
This will just be a quick... maybe... here, I'll move this guy. It's... even though Bally did change the flipper almost 100%, you do notice that the base plate is kind of exactly the same size and has a lot of the same holes. So it is really clever. Like, yes, they did redesign the flipper, but like the engineering team that put these things together also worked with the constraint of, well, let's make sure it uses the same parts so we don't have like a crazy machine bill, right? To like remachine and do a whole nother line of base plates and stuff like that. So some of the parts are interchangeable, right? The nose bracket for the coil is the same between the old style, the new style. The crank stop is different. Obviously, this one needs to have the hole for the nye liner, so it's taller. And the end of stroke switch bracket is different as well to accommodate the expansion spring, which then resets the flipper. So I always thought that was pretty neat. Now, that being said, just in case you're thinking, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to order a bunch of these brackets. The old style Bally coil stop uses a number 8 screw, right? Just like the original Bally linear flippers did. But the way we have these things remanufactured is the stronger way with the number 10 screws. So we do have a separate part number for a game like Strikes and Spares and older. You could not use the linear flipper bracket, even though they look so similar, unless you were to like drill out your coil stops or something. And I think you might have enough meat to do that. You could probably drill these suckers out to accommodate a number 10, but I'm probably just making this way overcomplicated now. But it's just neat. I find it very fascinating that they were able to take something, and make it something totally new using a very old and tried set of assemblies. So I'm going to reassemble this sucker. And yeah, does that make sense? Does anyone get what I'm trying to say here? Was that a useful lesson?
It. That should be a good attribute. Hey, Johnny Demonic, thanks for joining us. Oh, he's reading again. Thanks, Johnny.
Wow. Hey, thanks.
Come on down to pinball school.
Yeah, we're talking about antiquated stuff.
Yeah, Bally Flippers. It's all about the Bally Flippers.
I think it's neat. I've always been a big Bally fanboy. So I find a lot of all of the Bally stuff is just really fascinating to me. And I like the, I mean, Bally was the king of pinball for a few years, for many reasons, but the innovations and the things that Bally tried was pretty amazing. Now, that doesn't mean that Williams at the same time was not trying. I mean, Williams had the best-selling pinball machine of all time, which was Flash in 1979. They made, some really amazing stuff, but right after that is when Bally really started taking off, and it was definitely due to their art department. They had an internal art department, which was just incredible, and their games were just very striking. Williams did a lot of things first, and I feel like Bally came in and refined those ideas and did them just different enough or just better enough to make a bigger impact, right? Williams was first to the table with a talking pinball machine with Gorgar, right? But only a few months later, Bally came out with Xenon, and not only did Xenon have voice, but it also had great sound effects and great music that was just so different than what was around at the time. And then even considering, I mean, look at the art on games like Blackout, or look at the art on games like Gorgar, and then look at the art from Viking or Xenon or any of those games from the late 80s. They're just much more striking and more lovely games. So I think this is opinion based. But Bally was definitely the king of pinball for a few years. Williams wasn't able to have any gigantic successes like Flash for many years. Yeah, I don't know. And I guess I always heard too that Williams kind of, the word from the top was to keep the market wanting. They stopped making Flash on purpose. They probably could have sold thousands more. The demand was there, but they stopped because they wanted to make sure that people would still buy their next game. And it's kind of hilarious because, not hilarious, it's very depressing, but just 20 years later, Williams kind of ran into that same problem, right? Why would I buy Medieval Madness and why would I buy Junkyard or Circus Voltaire when my old 7-year-old Addams family or 5-year-old Addams family is still making a ton of money? It's already paid off. Why would I buy something new? So they kind of shot themselves in the foot when they made a good game like that. Anyways, that's Kyle's boring history lesson. Did I rile anyone's feathers by saying linear flippers are really awesome?
No, I think everyone in the chat agrees with you, Kyle.
Wow.
They like linear flippers and have games. Boys and anyone else, if you are looking for an actual install video for Bally Flippers, yeah, definitely check out our archives on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And we have quite a few. You can just type in Flipper Rebuild and it'll pull up everything. I should actually make a Flipper Rebuild category. So we're starting to get...
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have a few more games we need to shoot. I mean, we definitely need to do a modern Stern game. We need to actually do a WPC one, even though the System 11 one is like basically the same thing, just without the importance of the end of stroke switch. Yeah, no, it'd be fun. I mean, Flipper rebuilds are like the greatest things. So I guess here, since I don't want to put this, actually I will put it back together just so I don't have to look at it hanging apart. But let me show you on the game itself. Let's jump back up here and we will talk about how to test end of stroke switches. Like I think we might have gone over this on some of our other videos, but let's look at a game that, let's test and see if it's good to go. You know what I mean? We're gonna put our paws all over it and figure out if it's okay to start flipping and maybe starting to play the game. Where the heck did my spring go? Oh, there it is.
Rhett Reese is in the chat. He's the...
Oh, hey, Rhett.
The jerky guy.
He's the jerky guy, and he and I
Accolades.
have
Said,
some.
thank you, Kyle. He also said that you stole Steve's beard hair, put it on top of your head.
I need a haircut really bad, and it will happen eventually.
And Mitch agreed.
We're going
We
to.
have a question from DC Penguin. Real quick, Kyle, side tangent question. We always love those. DC Penguin has a Space Invaders game. They rebuilt the flippers by replacing the switches. He says, when I went to catch and hold the ball, it hums really bad. I'm pretty sure they are adjusted right. Any ideas what could be causing the hum?
Yeah, so what I would recommend with the hum is, what camera do we have on? Put the big camera on the main screen as this camera, if you would.
A green camera, got you.
Yeah, green cam. The hum comes from the vibration of this plunger and this the stop like holding against each other, right? These things will start to vibrate against each other. So it's not hurting anything. There's nothing bad going on because of that hum. You're not going to break your game or nothing like that. But, to truly rebuild your flippers, you would want to replace, again, the plunger and link and also replace your coil stop at the same time. It's not necessary to replace this guy unless it's actually broken or there's something weird going on with it. These guys are tough. Unless the stud breaks or something like that, there's nothing that can wear out on this. But like we talked about earlier, the wear points are both within these two pieces right here. But if you replace this guy, this is a necessary replacement as well. Also, if it's humming, you can also check and see if you have this wave washer. This wave washer is supposed to be installed between the coil and something. And that keeps a little bit of pressure up against the coil to keep it from vibrating a little bit. In an ideal world, if I was getting ready to put this game on location also, I might extend these wires or see if we can flip the coil, right? William started flipping the coils in the late 80s because the vibration of the plunger hitting the coil stop here would cause wires to break off of the coil on that side. If you reverse it, there is less vibration and they last a bit longer.
Oh yeah, I love that tip. It's such a simple tip, but it makes so much sense in the sense of physics. And when you do reverse it, it's so satisfying. You're like, yeah, I'm helping it last.
It's always something I try to do. Sometimes even again, if I had to extend the wires, I wouldn't. But a lot of times on customers' games, on service calls where the games might be far away, and I don't want to have hey, since you came here, the flipper ain't working no more. And it's like, oh, crap. So anything you can do to increase the service life of something is worth your time. And it's definitely worth, charging and explaining to the customer why you're spending the time doing this as well. I will do that on this game eventually, but maybe once I get a new playfield for it. Okay, so let's take a look here too. Can I move this flipper enough? Not really, I need to tighten it a little. End of stroke switches, as we all know, most important part of your flipper. It keeps everything happy, but there is a correct way to kind of test. I didn't set any free play. Hold on, I need to do this without doing it too quick. It's binding right now because there's no free play between the crank and the bushing or the flipper and the playfield. Oop, wrong way. Let me get this out so I can demonstrate this. But, and as you can see, right, I mean, the flipper, the whole assembly will actuate the end of stroke switch when it comes to its end of stroke, when the flipper comes to its end of stroke. But there's a proper way to test it. You can get a false positive testing these things depending on where you grab the flipper from, right, to see where the end of stroke switch might actuate. I'm going to try to get this guy focused in on the end of stroke switch. You can kind of see that, right? So now remember how much free play we have here? If I were to push on a certain part of the plunger, right? If I were to push maybe here and turn the flipper like this, there are some cases where you might be able to not get the end of stroke switch to open in a realistic manner. I don't think I'll be able to show on this flipper mech exactly it caused that to happen. Man, I can't set the free play on this thing. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just keep messing with it. When you're checking for end of stroke actuation, I always will pull from this part of the plunger right here. Because this is what is actually being pulled into the coil. And you can see it's just barely opening. Now, if we were to turn it like from here or something like that, right? Do you see how much wider that gap is?
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Now, that is the difference between the slop here and here and that, which is actuality, right? When this thing engages, it's going to pull this back this much. We're not going to get this extra 1 degree of rotation by turning it from the crank. So, pro tip. If you know, like, look, you just bought this Strikes and Spares, you're stoked, you want to bring it, you want to play it, you want to, you know, get it back to life as fast as possible. This is one thing you definitely want to do, right? When you check your end of stroke switches, always pull from the plunger. Don't do it like this. You'll get a false positive, right? If I turned it like this and it only opened up this much, you're not going to have an end of stroke switch that's opening and you'll cook things. And you don't want to do that. So
don't cook.
Pro tip. Do it that way, not the other way.
Mr. Baxter asked, how do you measure the gap on the EOS switch?
With my eyes. Look, you just want to make sure that it's open, right? You want to make sure that it will open reliably and there is enough space there to create a visible gap, right? So if we had this thing opening sooner, the flipper would start to lose. It would come off of that high power side of the coil a little quicker, and that would make it a lot of a weaker flip. So what we're trying to get, I think a lot of the service manuals would say like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch or something like that at the full stroke. And that will allow the flipper to fully stroke through on the power winding before both of the windings are combined for that low power, high resistance. Right at the end of stroke. So right here, that's perfectly adjusted. That would be as strong as it could possibly get. So
looks good.
I like to use my eyes, and you'll just get used to what is right? Get in here and use your fingers and bend the thing in and out. When you adjust the switches to open and close, especially these guys, it is ideal if you can get the switches to adjust for a little bit of wipe. What that means is when the switch is opening and closing, they will kind of do this instead of just break.
Oh, where are you?
Sony cam. Here, I'm just using the Sony cam. Instead of them just breaking like that, having a little bit of wipe is good because that will cause them to burnish just ever so slightly and wipe the crap off of each other's faces instead of like this, where they'll just spark, and you'll get a bunch of buildup, and that's when you start to get like electrically weak flippers.
Wait, but how do you get it to wipe?
By adjusting the switches ever so carefully. It's maybe when we rebuild these things or we do another game, we will work on that. I'm not going to bother with it now because it is a fine adjustment, and when we go and actually replace some of these slightly worn out components, it will not carry over. What you can do is you could try to angle in like one side of the switch just ever so slightly. I mean, we're talking like 1 degree. So that way when it breaks, it kind of folds away like that.
Gotcha.
So that's and remember now that's something that is only viable on what I like to call like a mechanical flipper, right? A mechanical brake flipper like that, where the end of stroke switch actually cuts voltage. You do not need to do that on your Stern games, Williams games, or later Data East games that used electronic end of stroke switches, which is just a signal. So, yeah.
Nice. It's an awesome tip.
The more you know.
I don't know.
Man, I've been talking a lot. Is this making sense? Are people understanding this? You guys enjoying the Bally Flipper debate?
Yeah, sorry guys about the chat. Restream just keeps reposting like random choosing comments.
Really?
To
Restream wasn't working at all last weekend, and now it's being a pain in the butt. Oh, and you know what? I guess we get a lot of calls about this too, from customer support side. This wasn't just Bally. Williams did this as well. This is also broken. There's supposed to be one more spacer in this stack. But Bally drove the upper flippers on games that used upper flippers with the end of stroke switch. So we have a normally closed and a normally open switch on this stack. The way this works is the flipper crank will come in. Now there's supposed to be another plunge, a spacer right here. So I'm going to kind of do it with my hands. But the crank will come in, right? And you've got your normally closed, normally open. Crank comes in, starts to push this up, which will break the end of stroke switch. And while that is being broken, the normally open switch will close, which drives the upper flipper. I don't remember when Williams changed. I think Williams started using 2 switches on the cabinet instead of doing it this way. I know the Flash I've been working on over there has a similar setup. But like you'll notice on some games, and we're talking older games, not WPC games or something like that, where you can stage the flippers, right? You'll push a flipper button in and you can flip the first one, and then a little more will flip the second one, where that's impossible on a Bally game. Because when this thing goes all the way up, it closes that second switch, and that's how you actuate the upper flipper. So the upper flipper has its own end of stroke switch. It just doesn't have another switch to do another flipper. So an upper flipper, if you had like a power play or a, I don't know, any game that has more than one flipper, Fathom or something like that, your upper flipper would just have a end of stroke switch like this. So it is a very important adjustment to get this right as well. It's a little more complicated, right? Because not only do you need to ensure you have things bent the right way for this guy to open at the end of stroke, it also needs to close this switch at the end of stroke.
And
Kinda
that's
neat.
why people don't like it?
No, people don't like it just because it's different.
Can't get you to say anything else. It's just
No, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, really. It's like, is it as efficient? Like, maybe not, but I don't know. I think it's cool, right? It's like, I could have a super cool, like, Corvette. Well, I mean, actually, this would be cool. If you put, like, a modern Corvette engine into an old Corvette, I mean, it makes it better, yeah, right? But it's like, I'd rather have something be original because I'm Mr. Boring Originality guy. Here's another difference, right? When we were talking about the end of stroke gap there, you always want to push the plunger because look at this. When this plunger is at its full extent, if I wiggle the crank, see how much more play I can get?
Yeah.
So always when you're testing end of stroke switches, use the plunger, not the crank.
That makes sense. That's a good tip.
There you go.
Flippers could potentially be the most important part of pinball. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
behind the power
Well,
supply.
At least, like, if you know anything about pinball repair, flipper rebuilds are very important, right? That's how you're.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, right?
Yes,
But it's
yes,
like
flippers.
people will play a broken pinball machine, but people will not play a game that has no flippers, right? I mean, a lot of the service calls I get, you know, I call the person will call and say, oh, I got a pinball machine's broken. It's like, okay, what is it? Blah, blah, blah. Well, what doesn't work? I was like, well, it all works fine. Everything's perfect. But, you know, the flippers just stopped working. You know, then you get to their place and you look at the game and it's just a freaking rat's nest and the whole thing is, nothing is working. And it just so happens that the only thing they notice that stopped working is the flippers, right? The flippers are the most important part of the game. So, you know, if you have to prioritize getting something to work on a big, long service call or something, you know, always try to prioritize flippers, that's for sure. It hurts. I like to try to fix everything, but...
Okay. Let's take a moment and read through Rhett Reese's message that came in like 50 different times in different orders from Restream.
Oh no!
YouTube. But I believe we're talking about the EOS switch gap. He says he has a meteor, and the top flipper flaps spazzes when you use the right flipper button.
If spazzes, okay, so a lot of the time,
what would you do to fix that?
A spazzing flipper is not going to be your end of stroke switch. Usually what's happening with a spazzing flipper is, I think we've talked about this before, I'm not going to go crazy in depth into it again, but on a flipper you've got a power winding, so you've got a fat wire that is wrapped less times, and then you've also got another wire in here that is much skinnier and is wrapped many, many, many times. What usually means when you have a flipper that is spazzing is that teeny little wire has broken. And what that means is that you've lost your hold coil. So the flipper uses its high-powered side to go whack. And then when the end of stroke switch opens, it combines the the skinny high-resistance hold side with the high-power side. And if it does not have that, if you have a broken circuit, right, it's going to start fluttering, right, because it's going to want to start falling, and then it starts going blah, blah, blah. So what I'd recommend is go in there and just make sure that you have, make sure that the wire hasn't broken off. It always breaks off here at the edge of the bobbin. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can unwrap it once, strip the varnish away, and solder it back in. It's always best just to buy a new coil because that one is slightly compromised at that point. So yeah, when you lose your hold circuit or your power circuit, I mean, it depends on what kind of thwap you've got. If you've got a really weak, sad flipper and it's just going duh, duh, then you don't have a power side. If it's going thwack and it's not holding or the coil's catching on fire, well, you've got an end of stroke switch problem or a hold winding problem. You could test that by removing the diodes or making sure you have continuity between both windings, which you can kind of see if you get close. On this Bally Flipper, we've got a fat winding here. The fat winding comes out here, and you've also got the skinny winding here, and the other side of the skinny winding is here. As you can see, the end of stroke switch bridges both of these two gaps right there. So, anyways.
So crusty.
I do owe you a phone call, Rhett, so I will call you, and we can see if we can solve through all this, especially once you get the new driver board for your Stars game. I will give you some phone support. Here's another difference in linear flippers that I find interesting. They have a few different variations of the base plate, Bally did, because Bally did end up using this base plate for many things. On hard body, this is the same exact setup for the flex save. It uses the same bracket, it just doesn't have an end of stroke switch, but it's a flipper coil basically. This is from an earlier inline flipper game. We can tell this because there are only 4 holes. Later games had 6 holes. So all of our reproduction brackets do have 6 holes. Bally found this necessary to stop the loosage and the nastiness. They would usually run 2 number 8 screws through the outer holes and then a number 10 screw through the middle holes for extra holdage. Some games they notched out the center here. I'm going to get them made with a notched out center as well. In some games they did have, you don't want to use that flipper bracket if you don't have to. But in some games, Centaur is one that comes to mind. I think a customer called in and bought a base, but there's a lamp on Centaur that goes right here because that's how they fit everything together. So there are a few different flavors of this bracket, but you always want to use the one with as many mounting holes as possible for extra sturdiness. Yeah. Whew, my voice is starting to go. I'm talking too much.
Great. Yeah. What else can you talk about? I feel like you covered so much.
Yeah, I feel like I brain drained.
Does anyone have any questions? I mean, I feel like a lot of you are familiar with this type of content, but the refreshers are always good.
Or they're all asleep.
No.
Nah. We can talk more about pinball history.
Weird
What?
restream bot is just taking Rhett's messages and like stacking them up 10 at a time, and it's just repeating over and over and over again.
Maybe he has.
Wisp is asleep. Confirmed. JK live.
Great.
No,
It's
and I think Wild Man was helping someone in the chat. It's good. It's good chat.
this is such a weird design. Why the heck did they do this? I guess it's cheap. But these things, it was funny, when I took the old brackets out of The Simpsons, this thing was so chewed up on the top, where this bracket just comes in and, you know, it's constantly rotated up against there. I was working on this, Williams sound and speech board for a friend. And I thought I was almost done, and then I was like, ooh, there's an evil AMI chip. I don't like these things. Like, let me lift it out and look at it really quick. And lo and behold, oh gosh, there's an evil Scanby socket. And then I didn't notice it, right? But then I looked at the speech board and like, oh crap, there's a Scanby socket. And there's a Scanby socket under each one of those chips. So
that's what you were screaming about earlier before we started the stream. You were like, Scanby?
I was so close to being done, and then it turned out I wasn't. I still have my pile of dead Scanby stuff. I've been working on a bunch of old Williams games here the last week.
What game is that soundboard from?
This is from Firepower.
Firepower, nice. We do have a few questions in the chat.
I love questions. Let's do it.
Oh, Restream, why do you hate us? Well, Rhett asked, what kind of unsoldering iron do you use? You want to do your Hako shout out? And then
Hako 301, best in the business. If you guys, I know I've talked about it a lot, but if anyone buys a Hako, make sure to buy more tips for it. Also, make sure you get a suitable reaming rod. They do clog up a lot. I know that when we've done a lot of like solder suckering on this show, I do it the really long way where sometimes I'll cut components and then extract them and then just suck solder. You don't want to be sucking like chip legs or anything through that tube because it will get stuck, it will get clogged. The tips do have like a finite lifespan and they do not last forever, so I would definitely recommend stocking up on a couple extra. Also get extra filter pads. These guys at the butt. Oops, I'm dropping solder chips on my circuit board. Let me get this out of the way. The solder stuff gets sucked into this tube and the vacuum, right, it pulls through this little filter piece, which is, you know, it's got like two-stage protection. All the solder gets caught on this cup, but then it also will get caught in this filter. But when these filters get really clogged from all the solder smoke, that causes problems. So it's worth the extra couple bucks. Oops. Nice.
I'm gonna scroll up past all these spam. Wildman asks, Kyle, do you know offhand if that linear flipper was used in the Bally game Black Pyramid?
Bally game what?
Black Pyramid.
Yes.
Don't you have a Black Pyramid?
No, but Black Pyramid's one of my favorite games.
Oh, okay, that's what it's on.
I really like a lot of those super basic Bally games from the mid-'80s. Kings of Steel is one of my favorite games. That game's not super basic because Kings of Steel is kind of like, here, keep that small camera on. I'm going to walk over to Kings of Steel.
Oh, field trip.
Field trip.
So yeah, it is a linear flipper for Black Pyramid.
All of the mid-'80s games, again, every Bally game from Rolling Stones until Truck Stop, which was the last actual, well, it wasn't the last actual Bally game. I think the last actual Bally game was, I don't know. It wasn't Atlantis because that was a Williams manufacturer. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Kings of Steel is cool. It's like a cheap 8-ball deluxe, except for the drop targets are opposite. It's got a set of 10 drop targets with memory and up and down capabilities. And there's just like a couple neat ways of scoring, right? You start off by getting all your suits. So you start a game and 10 comes up, and then you got the jacks, awesome. The 3 queens, and then, you know, the queen, 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 jack, jack. And it's kind of a fun, it's got neat geometry where you can hit it from this flipper, but you can also rebound into those drop targets a lot. It's got a neat like bonus multiplier addition thing here. This upper saucer can be worth a ton. This lane starts a random award mode. This is a good game. A lot of people write a lot of this stuff off because it's so basic, but y'all are wrong. Black Pyramid is also another fun game in that respect. I'd like to get one. Never owned one, fixed a lot of them. It's cool.
Nice. And then we have another question that was from a little bit ago from Boys.
Yo.
Said, I typically screw in those set screws just enough to make them hold and then adjust the flipper back. Is there a better way? Nope.
That's definitely the best way to do it. Get them nice and tight, or get them nice and snug so the flipper can't fall. And then I will usually try to set my free play at that time also. I'm tall, so I have like unusual mechanics. I can do a lot of this stuff by standing up, right? I can set the free play, put my head over here, adjust the correct height of the flipper. Oh, sorry, that camera can't see. But yeah, I'll try to kind of get it in there so it's snug, set the up-down play, and then adjust it to its resting spot, hold the flipper, and get it nice and tight, double check, and then crank it down. They do need to be very tight, so having a nice sharp Allen wrench is important. The original Bally, let me see if I think these are original. The original Bally set screws are actually incredible because they have little grippy feet. So if you replace these with like an Allen cap screw or something, I know that some of the one supplier we have for this part, they don't use the original sizing, which I believe is a number 10 set screw. And I think the other supplier we get these from does. If you can, reuse these. If you cannot, save them. They're really neat because they've got little clenchy teeth.
I can focus on that. Oh, wow.
So they do a really good job of getting in on that flipper bat and holding it in place where, as you can imagine, just like a flat-headed machine thread screw doesn't have as much grip. So, you know, you're not doing it wrong, right? Again, when I say one of our suppliers might, if you get some of them that don't use these, it's not a big deal. It's going to work just fine. But what I would hate for is you to maybe toss these away, keep them in your parts box, or keep them in a baggie in your linear flipper games and use them next time. I forgot, there was like a trademark name. If MGM Studio is in the chat, he will probably know exactly what it's called, but they were called something. I forget what it is. Bally used a lot of unique hardware, actually. Bally used thread cutting screws on these assemblies also. I guess theoretically you could, if you had this thing nice and tight and square, you could just use these screws to cut threads into these untapped holes. They used a lot of really unique hardware. I guess I could take one out and we could see. I guess also, not that anyone ever noticed, but I think when we were talking about like getting to know your Bally game and we were like shorting out transistors and making coils go and stuff, and I said, oh, Bally was the best because they spent extra money and used crimp and stuff Molex. They did for a certain period of time. There was a point when Bally did switch from using crimp and stuff Molex connections to IDC connectors, and that's a very sad day for Bally. They really started to go downhill at that point.
Oh, speaking of crimps or crumpets.
Mm.
Now I can't even find it, Colin. Colin asked, do ratcheting crumpets work well? Do ratcheting crimpers work well?
Colin's great at trolling me. I don't know.
Crumpets?
I don't have any ratcheting crumpets. They probably do, man.
Crimpers.
I'm still waiting for someone to just send me some. My birthday's in a couple months. You can send me a set and I'll see if I like them. No, I'm just kidding. One day. But anyways, thread cutting screws, they're kind of cool. They're kind of narrow. They got a little snub nose. And they will kind of cut threads. So ratcheting crimpers are probably really awesome. I'm just an old stubborn man, so I don't want to. Oh, you put the camera in. Let me show you.
Oh yeah, I switched.
It doesn't really look that much different.
Focus. Hold on, I can get it. Oh, I love this camera. Look at that. Damn.
See how it's kind of skinnier at the nose?
Yeah.
That allows it to get in the hole and kind of create a little bit of a pre-thread for the screw to come in and finish threading the softer steel.
Oh, Colin said he'd send you some if you send him your address.
Now I'm going to sound like a beggar, so I'm going to rescind my offer.
You could always ship it to Marco with Kyle's name on it and add some like a glitter bomb in it or something.
Oh God.
When he opens it up, it explodes everywhere. Pinball122 came in with a question. He spoke with Dave and mentioned that David Valansky, I'm assuming he's talking about the one and only and awesome, asked if you have an EM schematic that he has been looking for.
Oh,
and he
yes.
tried calling, but it said you're off they said you're off for a week or so. Can I?
I'm just not in the office. I'm sorry. Yeah, David texted me about that, but I spaced. Send me an email. And I will also try to, I'll see, it was for a 1949 Chicago coin something or other, I believe. I'll see. I know that, I think I have a part number for that, so I could make it live on the website, but I need to double check. But if you send me an email at Kyle, Kyle, at marcopinball.com, I could get you squared away.
Ooh, you might have to change that now that we have another Kyle coming in.
No, I'm OG.
O2.
Paul sent me an article about how it like techie offices, like having just a first name email is like a sign of like power because you were the original Kyle or something. I thought that was hilarious.
I'll save that for you. I opened the Amazon thing. DeWisp sent you a link to a ration crimper that's only $29.
Dang. This one's almost worn out. I've had this one for like 7-8 years, and it's getting to a point where it's getting...
Yay, glitter bomb.
Old.
Yeah, Midge is answering a question to Daniel, but Daniel was asking, do you have the Gottlieb System 80 flipper assembly? And
I think we have parts to it. Daniel, I'll send you some. My Kings of Steel actually has Gottlieb System 80 flippers in it because someone probably couldn't get parts for the linear flipper, so someone put these other Gottlieb flippers in it. If you really need some and I don't have them, I'll send these to you, all the way to Croatia with love.
Ooh, here's a good question for you. From Obi Drunk Kenobi, thanks for joining us.
What conditioner do I use?
Chat.
Oh.
Thanks for traveling down this rabbit hole with us. He said, the tinfoil hat question is, have you noticed newer machines use single wire flipper coils that will build up heat after a jam session that will cause weaker flipper strength? I.e., backhandable shots become impossible on non-cold games?
Yeah.
Kyle doesn't play pinball enough to.
Oh, come on. No, I do. Getting my, look at my grand champion score of a measly 170 million on Led Zeppelin. No, that's a thing. It totally is. It's not because it's a single-winded coil. The way that works is there is software, and when you push the flipper button, the computer says, okay, 50 volts, go. And then like less than a millisecond later, it says, okay, no more of that. And it pulses on, I think on the new Stern games, at least the older ones, or I don't remember what they do, but I think it's 9 volts. So what it does is then it pulses 9 volts to the flipper on and off every like X amount of milliseconds to hold the flipper up. So they get hot. I mean, but any flipper coil is going to get hot. Your dual wound flipper coils on your Williams games that are, again, a solid state flipper, which does something very similar. Your Fliptronic games, your old Bally games, your old Gottlieb games, old Williams games, old anything games, they'll all do the same thing. And what that is it's the bobbin, this nylon bobbin on the coil. It's when it heats up, it contracts slightly. And it makes everything just a little bit tighter, I think. I mean, there's things that I don't understand, right? There's all sorts of like thermodynamics stuff that I'm not anywhere near smart enough to understand. But yes, no, that's a real thing. It totally is. And there's really not much you can do. Having like really tight, like, you know, fresh flippers can definitely like make that backhandable shot happen a little bit longer, but once they get toasty, I mean, that's just part of pinball, really. It's there's really no way to fix that. I can't think of anything. Rotary solenoids, maybe, like Atari tried to do 40-something years ago.
Yeah, Midge said that the reason your scores are not the highest because it's the hot coils.
That's right, yeah. But I still do have the grand champion. Every day before I leave the place I'm at now, which is not the Marco office, I jam a couple games of Led Zeppelin, and let me. It's really good. I haven't updated the code yet. I'm still on just 0.9, but it's like I'm really enjoying the game. The experience is fun. I like the way it kind of builds up to like a massive crescendo, but I haven't been able to break the 200 million point mark yet. But I've been enjoying it a lot lately. But yeah, that's definitely a tinfoil hat question. But if we had a thermodynamicist, electrical engineer dude in here, he'd probably be able to tell you why.
Nice. All right. Well, Kyle, if anyone has any questions for Kyle, not related to Bally Flippers, which y'all are asking anyways, but I'd like to openly remind you, you can go ahead and ask Kyle's for our little Q&A session. We have about 15 more minutes on the show before we send y'all off into the pinball world. And let's talk about a little bit about next week. We've been talking about bringing Jungle Lord into the show for a while. Are we ready for that, do you think?
Yeah, we're ready. Let's do it. It's What
are we gonna do with Jungle Lord?
Jungle Lord needs it all. It is. I just got it booting, so it's got the computer works. I haven't gone over the power supply yet. It will be very similar to what we did on the System 6 game. So I don't know if you guys are interested. Let me know if you want to see it or if you absolutely want me to skip it. But the power supply needs to be given a first aid kit. The computer's already been done. The soundboards have not been done. That's pretty boring, though, because it's just capacitors. The power supply is a little more useful, I think. But then it just needs to be gone through. The game needs to be torn down. When I tear it down, I want to take the plastics off and scan them. I want to clean them. We need to do a little bit of work on the playfield. I have never lifted the playfield on this game, so I have no idea what it looks like under there. It's probably a mess. We could start with the electronics and then go into the teardown if you want. We could go look at it right now. Should we go do a quick sneak peek of Jungle Lord?
Where is it? Yeah, sure.
It's dark enough where you can't see the ugly behind it. Let's here switch off the handheld's not even on. Let's go over there really quick.
Yeah, I'll keep it off until you.
It's an okay shape. It's a game that I got it for free. Well, I didn't. I traded labor for it, but still. So it's not like the world's nicest game, but it's going to be a very good player when we're done with it. Jungle Lord's one of my favorite games.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, turn it on.
All I see is black.
Well, wait. Oh, wait. Oh, crap. Okay, wait. Everyone still hold on. I unplugged it so I could plug in something else behind everything.
What are we looking at? Oh, okay. I see the back man. I see his leg.
I've been since I got the game running, I've been like just keeping it on all day to like stress test it and see if the fix is going to hold, but the power supply seems good so far. But we definitely want to bulletproof it, right? While it's in the shop, before I take it home, we want to make sure it's happy.
Oh, that was a pretty shot.
It doesn't have batteries, so we have to do the on-off. There it goes. So I was very pleased when I got it to boot up. I mean, all the feature lights work. I don't think I have the solenoids plugged in, just in fear that maybe they'd be locked on or something. But, you know, it's just an old, crappy pinball machine, and it needs to have life bled back into, or breathe back into it.
So our episode next Thursday will kind of be like an overview.
Let's jump into something, right? It's like I just don't know if the chat wants to continuously see me, or the viewers continuously want to see me like recap power supplies. But the only thing I see for it is that we've never done a System 7 power supply. System 7 is a lot different than System 6. Not a lot different, but it's got enough difference to it that it might be worth showing. Cool game though. It's got, if you've never played Jungle Lord, it's got magnasaves, like all of the dual level games. I think all of them do, yeah. But the neat thing, Jungle Lord is the game that came after Black Knight. And Black Knight's magnasave was hit it and the ball was held there for X amount of seconds and it would hopefully drop it into the in lane. On Jungle Lord, you can earn your magnasave credits and you can tap it on and off, which is really fun because what you can do is if the ball's coming, you could nab that magnasave and it'll catch the ball and fling it back into play. So you can do some really neat things with this game.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, for gifting all the subs. That's awesome.
Whoa, hey, thanks. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see through the glare, but I mean, the playfield's really dry. It's sad. It's missing a good amount of art, but once we go through and we get it juicy again, we'll wax it up and see if we can get this thing to take a little moisture. We'll have a really good Jungle Lord to play tournament games on once it's done. This is a fun dollar games game. Yeah. You tell me what you want to see. It's going to need everything, so let's just figure out what we want on camera.
Nice.
I didn't want to do the computer because we've already done a early Williams computer a few times.
Awesome. Well, the only question we got in was, what are you drinking? From Colin.
I still want to try to find some heady topper. I found a beer from a brewery in Charleston that was a cranberry sour, and the art was really awesome because it was just like a picture of like jellied cranberry, and I thought that was pretty good. One of my coworkers got me a bottle of Maker's Mark for Christmas, so I'm still kind of sipping through that a little bit. What about you, Colin? What are you drinking?
He's drinking s'mores stout. A s'more stout with probably some IPAs too. It's Hop Slam season.
It's what?
Hop Slam season.
Oh, Hop Slam. Yeah. See, I want to try to find some Hop Slam. I'll have to go see if I can check out some bottle shops and see if I can find some. I've only had that beer once because I used to have to trade for it to get people from the East Coast to send it out to me on the West Coast. But now I live here, so I can get some.
Can you get heady topper over there?
Maybe. I think I can get Hop Slam.
Mr. Loaf's friend did the artwork for that.
Whose friend did?
Mr. Loaf.
Really?
Mr. Loaf. That's
cool. Yeah, that's a beer that I've only had Heady Topper like once, but I've had Hop Slam a few times. Heady Topper is the beer I'm really looking for. So if anyone wants to start a beer trade, send me an email. We can do some South Carolina trades too. There's some good beer here. A lot of really creative people and good stuff.
Nice.
This weekend I definitely have plans if I can fit them in between fixing house. Oh.
Jungle Lord.
Jungle Lord's screaming at me.
It's like, work on me now.
I want to. I'm going to work on my Grand Prix. It's unless we do PinTech from Kyle's house, I think I'm going to get Grand Prix working And maybe we'll try to do something on that game. But it would be fun to stream gameplay of that. It's funny. It's like one of the only pinball machines I've ever owned that's worked better after I folded it up and moved it than it did before I folded it up and moved it. But it just needs some love.
We just got a question from Pin Daddy. Any chance we'll ever remake the back box supports for the Sega Showcase cabs?
Yes, if you send me some. If you can send me the ones that actually fold out from the head, right? The ones that lean up against the side rails. If you send me some, I'll get some made. They're not super complicated. I don't think. I mean, it's just two 90-degree bends, and then they're a hollow slit for them to slide. I can't remember what they look like now. Can you pull a picture up? No. Someone send me a sample and I can make it happen. That would be a good one. There's a lot of those games were sold off into homes very early, and they have not been taken very good care of, and a lot of games are missing those things. That's a great idea. Thank you. I've never thought about that.
Oh man.
Actually, wait.
Kyle gets all his best ideas from this stream.
Friend of the show.
Contributing a lot.
Wait, does Viper use that? No, Viper doesn't use that. Viper's after South Park. It's the games that came right before South Park that use that. It's like Star Wars and X-Files and...
Yeah, DeWisp can send you pictures to the Sega Showcase rails. I don't think Kyle wants pictures. I would think he wants the actual thing.
Yeah, I wanted a picture so I could see if I could definitively say yes or not. If they're flat, if they're mostly flat, they don't have any gussets, and they have like 90-degree bends in them, yes, I could definitely get stuff like that made very easy. That would be a good product. I think I actually have a friend, or not a friend, but a guy I am trying to buy his X-Files from. Maybe I should just try to buy the X-Files so I can get those things and I can get a sample. But if one of you guys has a sample, send it to me. I will use them to get recreated, and then I will send you a free set of brand new ones.
Yeah, so. DeWisp says, email me and we can figure out how to get them to you.
Okay. That's actually, well, how about you email me, because I'm not at my computer, and I don't know if you want to give your email out to everyone, but I'm crazy, and I'll give my email to everyone. Kyle@marcopinball.com.
Kyle@marcopinball.com. Rhett asked, what about whodunit 3-way ramp, center ramp?
Ramps are harder because there are not very many people equipped to make ramps. When the ramps are remade...
Oh, he already did.
Oh, you did. Thank you. Ramps are hard, man. Generally, for a ramp, I need a sample, and a lot of the times that sample also needs to be sacrificed in the mold creation process. So I can email my ramp suppliers. We work with 2 people. Well, 3 people, but the 2 ones that we've been working with a lot lately are Ramp-O-Matic, and we have we've been selling Starship Fantasy ramps for a very, very long time. And Larry at Starship Fantasy does have a good backlog of things, but I don't think he has that stuff. Quiet, Jungle Lord. But yeah, I'd like to get that too. The problem is there's a lot of ramps that, I mean, yeah, whodunit definitely needs ramps, but I mean, there's a lot of games that are much older and are always much more busted than whodunit that need ramps like right away, ASAP kind of stuff, you know? Like roller games, for example. I mean, that wasn't like a low production game. It's not the most sought after pinball machine in the world, but there's no such thing as a roller games that has a non-cracked ramp, right? So I really want to try to get some of these older games that always have broken ramps back in business. Same thing with The Simpsons, our Simpsons Pinball Party. Simpsons Pinball Party, the garage ramp, it's always busted. So I'm trying to see if I could get a source for those too.
Nice.
I love that game.
Well, let's jump into our homework as the last thing of the day. We got 2 homework submissions from last week, and I'd like to continue it again this week. We'll put Mr. Baxter on the spot. What was that? Bam. So this is what I'm trying to do. It's a work in progress. It's like, audience, Marco, customer stories. So Colin sent us his picture of this ramp flap that he needed to work on that we talked a lot about on the show, on and off. And Colin said, I learned that doing rivets on the space shuttle sucked. Had to use a roll pin and just hammer. Ramp flap was easy, but I had to drill fresh holes. So what do you have to say about that, Kyle? I guess we can like kind of talk about his process. And then if you guys send me a photo of the repair you're doing using Marco parts and a quote, maybe I have to alter, Colin. If I posted this on social media, I might have to take off the word sucked and clean up.
Oh, come on. That's radio language. You can use that word.
But we're using your direct quote right now, buddy. So yeah, this is a fun thing.
That's actually a problem that's like purely only with reproduction ramps. The original space shuttle ramp, since it was the first vacuum formed ramp in Pinball, they actually had the ramp. They had where the ramp comes out. It's actually like routed down, so there's no flap on the original space shuttle. There is a ramp that goes into the slightly routed hole, and it sits right below the playfield. And then they use like a series of hardware to hold the ramp in place there. So, yeah, Colin has a reproduction ramp, and yes, it is a pain to rivet things. I hate rivets, but it's a necessary evil. I don't know. A rivet tool might be good for you. There's like they do make rivet tools that are like C-clamps, where you can attach rivet heads to them. They don't have a ton of depth, but it would be perfect for something like that. There are some instances where it wouldn't work on certain ramps, like putting like flash domes or switches on, but a lot of the times I just prefer to use threaded hardware when possible instead of a rivet. But yeah, I commiserate with you.
Well, good work getting it done, Colin. You deserve a nice hoppy beer for that one.
Yeah, go drink a beer and do some space shuttling.
All right, and then we had another submission from Craig. Craig, I don't know if you're here in class today, but Craig sent us a cute photo of this little WPC power driver. We love this guy. We have an episode where we did an install with this, right?
Yep.
So this reset fix board. So for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about this reset fix board and why it's so important and worth the time for Craig to put it into his Terminator 2 pin.
Quiet, Jungle Lord, you're interrupting. It's important because it's a really quick Band-Aid fix to get your game working again until you have the time or you feel like going in to fix it. The Williams games from the 90s had a very overloaded 5-volt system. And the computer is very sensitive. If it doesn't have 5 volts, if it goes underneath 4.85 volts or 4.8 volts, the computer will just reset. So a lot of the times when you're playing your game and you hit both flippers or something, it suddenly resets and comes back. That's a symptom of your 5-volt system starting to go bad. It's not very complicated, but it's an involved fix and takes some time and a little bit of research to figure out which steps you need to do out of the involved process. So, if you're playing your game and it takes a dump while you're having a party or you're having a good competition with your significant other or friend or something, it's good to have one around so you could pop it in the game and get it working again until you can go and solve the problem. It's an awesome device. It creates its own 5 volts on the board by intercepting the same 12 volts that comes into the computer. So it has instead of using the 5-volt regulator on the driver board, it has its own 5-volt regulator. And it can solve your problem 99% of the time. But he's like, Kyle, well, what if your 12-volt system has a problem? Well, then you've got a real problem, and you should probably fix it. But in this case, it's a good Band-Aid. I love them.
Nice. That was an awesome description. I like this. So, yeah, if you're working on a pinball project, you want to share something you've learned about it, some trials and tribulations story, send to marcotv@marcopinball.com your photo and your quote, and then we'll talk about it on the next show. So before I was like, lessons learned, something like that's good. A fun quote that goes along with the repair, or
share your frustration.
Anything you want to share, yeah. And then we'll do a little segment where we talk about it for a little bit. So maybe it's something where you're like, I'm stuck. What do I do?
What drove you to drinking that night? Let us know with a picture.
Colin just sends us a photo of like 5 different beers lined up, being like, which one should I drink?
All of them.
But no, these are your success stories as pinball repair technicians and keeping your games working. So share your success stories with us, and we'll share them with everyone else, and we'll learn a little from it.
That's right.
Sounds like fun, right?
I think so. I think it's a cool idea.
I think so. No one really likes homework. Wildman's dog ate his homework. It's just, I feel you. Guys. But you just get a little inkling, a little inspiration. Share it with us.
Share it. Let us see. Sorry, I've been fidgeting.
Pinball gifted some more subs. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks,
Good
man.
to see you.
Thank you. I cannot wait to start giving more content to all of you people that subscribe to us. It's we've all been very busy the last couple few weeks.
We're working on swag too. We're starting to look up the magnetic bottle opener for the coin door. Something
like that, If you don't drink beer, you could pop a soda with it, Pop fizzy water. Who knows? Yeah. But that would be fun. I think my internet at my house is going to be fast enough to stream also, so we could play Night Moves or Grand Prix at home. I don't know. I'm going to start taking some of my games home because I finally have room for them. I'd really like to stream TNA, Total Nuclear Annihilation, once I fix all of the gremlins inside. So that'd be fun. You could watch me get grumpy.
Yeah, Mr. Loaf, I love that so much. Mr. Loaf says he'll have to call Jungle Lord. We'll have to call in with some System 80 trials and tribulations. And that reminds me, I still think we should do something where we have a guest on the show. Maybe it's a different PinTech Live on a different day, but where we would bring y'all on the show and talk, or David Valansky comes in as a co-host and helps troubleshoot, but then maybe it's something where you're over your pinball machine and we can all look at it together, and it'd be kind of like a virtual field trip or something.
Yeah, we could try something like that. That'd be fun. Gottlieb games are not allowed, though. Sorry. No System 80 stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, Mr. Loaf, you're cut. You're cut from the team.
Dang,
I was excited.
That's the only games I don't have really memorized well, or those things. I like to fix them. I'm just not great at it. So it would be a learning thing for both of us. I would I'm excited to do to get an EM and have David come on and teach me the quick way to find my gremlins. That's for sure. Maybe if I ever bust out that bow and arrow we keep talking about, we could bring David on.
Bow and arrow, come on.
There's a lot of stuff I can definitely do myself, but when it gets down to really pinpointing what I need to be looking at and finding it the fast way, when you have someone who really knows how to read a schematic, it's beautiful. Instead of just kind of shotgunning through the schematic and being like, well, it does this, 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 this. Okay, let's do this, 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 this. It's great when David can be like, oh, just check that, and you do it, and it fires up. It's great. So we'll work that. Man, my voice is totally gone.
Well, Kyle, we'll let you go home then.
You're fired. Learn to talk more.
Tutorial video?
A what tutorial?
For bow and arrow? No, not yet. Well, maybe. You might be able to type in bow and arrow on YouTube and find some tutorial videos, but Maybe one day we will bring it onto the show.
That thing's really rough.
Schematic classes. That's why that Fun with Pinball class that you have to sign up for EM school is so awesome because you learn so much about reading schematics.
Yeah.
Although the past few weeks I've learned so much reading schematics just from your explanation, Kyle. It's very clear and concise, and I feel more confident. And I'm sure a lot of people in the chat do as well.
Why, thank you. I find, but the thing is, like, I find electronic schematics a lot easier to read.
Got you, girly tech.
What?
It was a Bowen joke. Bow and arrow, you know, Bowen Cairns, he does all the tutorial videos.
I'm sure Bowen's played bow and arrow. Bow and arrow.
I'm sure there's a bow and arrow. Bowen.
Bowen. Bow and arrow is like the pinnacle of electromechanical games. It's like bow and arrow and Grand Prix are like so complicated. It's incredible that they work. It's also funny, bow and arrow and Grand Prix were also Bally and Williams' first games that they ever made electronic versions of. They never sold them, but the prototype games for Williams and Bally's solid-state computers were on bow and arrow and Grand Prix, which is kind of neat. There's really neat pictures on IPDB of both of those prototype games. But they're neat because they've got like very complex logic to them for an electromechanical game. They can be very competitive, Grand Prix and especially. My favorite dollar game. Once the world goes back to normal and we can all enjoy pinball shows again, we can ignore the for amusement only and do a little dollar games.
Yeah, Pinball122 says we should do a pool for the Super Bowl. You buy a couple of squares. I don't know if we're allowed to do that. Are we allowed to do some? I
don't know anything about football. Be quiet, Gabe.
Make it more fun.
Yeah, I guess maybe we shouldn't be talking about gambling, but you know, whatever.
No dollar games. Awesome. Well, it's about that time. Actually, we're 10 minutes over. I think it's been a while since we've rated Mystery Pinball Theater. He's playing Black Knight.
Oh, heck yeah.
Rage, I think. Might be kind of fun. Head over there and chill for a little bit.
I think that's a great idea.
Colin Baxter's stealing all the money from his daughter and her boyfriend. And don't forget to vote for the Twippies.
Yeah.
The Twippies end January 31st, which we believe is Sunday. So get in your votes. Your votes matter. They count. No, we're not on the nominees list, but that doesn't matter because we are sponsors of the Twippies. So we are pretty much
that's right.
The Twippies.
Yeah.
I will be hosting it again this year. Wish me luck. It's going to be virtual again this year, which means I will be in post-production heaven. I love editing. And
we've got what was I going to say? Yes, the Sunday is the 31st. That's the last day. Voting in the Twippies is fun because your vote definitely matters. And
it does.
Now, okay, and let me also read the questions carefully, right? It's great when a game can sweep all of the categories for like best sound, best theme integration,
right, but it shouldn't.
No, but it shouldn't. Because it, you know, the way I voted, I'm not going to tell you how I voted. The game I voted for best game is not the game I voted for most of the other categories. So think critically, unless you're a super fanboy, which is also fine. But that'll be exciting. The Twippies are always fun. It's neat to see what people think, and it's fun to watch Keith Elwin walk away with like a gigantic pile of awards all the time. So. Yes, I saw it.
Avengers will win quite a few awards, but there is a lot of great games in 2020 and a wide variety of games and themes too. So
yeah,
I look forward to seeing a very spread out awards and it not just be, what was it, all Jurassic Park won everything last year.
And that kind of like, I mean, Jurassic Park is a fine game, but I definitely don't think it was deserving of every award. I think people
made as an EM award.
People need to read and think about each question before just being like, yep. you know. Yeah, I don't know. I saw David did mention the fine Gottlieb game behind me. 2001 is a very fine game. I think that's the game I'm most excited to bring home. To meet my new neighbors, I'm going to be that weird guy, and I'm going to bring 2001 home. I think I'm going to roll it out onto my porch and play porch pinball.
Yay.
And
meet
then
your neighbors.
meet my new neighbors, and then step very far aside and let them play pinball and say, howdy, I'm the weird guy with all the pinball machines.
I think it's great. I think that's a wonderful idea.
I do too. I need to figure out how to get maybe I'll high tap 2001 so I can play it with a power ball and make it really brutal.
Look, Kyle's trying to get out of his seat right now.
No, I was sitting on my foot.
Mystery Pinball Theater 3K. So that's it. That's the show. Vote for the Twippies.
Yeah.
Send us a photo and a quote of what you're working on so we can talk about it on the show. And yeah, play more pinball. Keep your pinball machines happy. Y'all are awesome. This is our favorite day of the week, spending time with y'all. So
Bat Out a Hill by
so
Meatloaf
much.
says it's going to rain. It's not going to rain because I have a covered porch.
Oh, all right, Kyle, put your face in the camera and wave goodbye.
That was really scary. Bye.
Oh, goodbye, Jungle Lord. Goodbye.
That was really fun.